I am Kathryn Tempest. I am a reader in Roman history and Latin literature. My research spans the history and literature of the Roman Republic. So that would be anything produced really in the 70s BC onwards. Okay, so disenchantment with the so-called political class is not a new thing. It's often accompanied by a belief that the politicians have misled us or even lied to us, that the system itself is somehow corrupt, that it's about keeping the powerful in power, that it increases the advantages of an economic elite. And in these circumstances, as more and more people feel that they are unrepresented, that the politicians don't speak for them, we often see the rise of a political outsider, someone who isn't, or at least who doesn't seem to be part of the establishment. So we're in the midst of this kind of moment now, and as political scientists grapple with understanding how and why such outsiders get elected to office, it's also fruitful to look back to the past in search of examples, and it can facilitate our understanding of it. So, ancient Rome offers us ample evidence of precisely this phenomenon. In the days before the emperors, Rome was a republic, so the guiding principle was that one man shouldn't hold too much power at Rome. So, magistrates were elected annually on rotation. The only permanent organ of state was the Senate, while the right to pass laws was vested in the People's Assembly. Now, that's obviously an ideal. It didn't work quite as wonderfully as all of that, so it took enormous amounts of wealth to be a senator at Rome. So these were the millionaires, if not the billionaires of their day. The result was that over time, a small group of families had dominated the top spots, and these top spots were the consulships. There was 2 of them every year, and again, they were exchanged annually. So they were a great marker of prestige, but people weren't getting to those spots because these small groups of families, the nobility, had been holding onto them for a long time. So by the time of the late Republic, which broadly defined as 133 to about 31 BC, dissatisfaction had reached an all-time high. It erupted into political violence and even civil war. So in 133 BC, Tiberius Gracchus was killed when he initiated a programme of land redistribution. Continuing his policies and meeting a similar fate, his brother Gaius had attempted to fix the price of grain for the urban population. A generation later, and you see the rise of the military hero, a man like Pompey the Great, who launched his political career off the back of successful campaigns defending Rome. But the person that really laid claim in a unique way on the sort of outsider status was Marcus Tullius Cicero. And Cicero himself was born in Arpinum, which is about 70 miles southeast of Rome. And although he was educated in Rome, he was always a first-generation senator, we could call him, a new man. And that's the label that people hurled at him. His newness stood against him. But he was hugely smart, and he was also wealthy, so he did have advantages. But he really harnessed this outsider status to his own unique advantage. So, for example, in his early legal speeches, he could present himself as a man who wasn't afraid to stand up against the corruption of other senators, presenting himself as a breath of fresh air in a very stale atmosphere. Upon his election to the consulship in 63 BC, he could claim that he had created a breakthrough. He had battered down the walls of defence that the nobility had put against the top spots, the consulships, for so long. So he said he was going to be a consul for the people, a consul popularis. It's where we get the word populist from today, the Latin term. But he wasn't really a populist as we would imagine him. He certainly engaged in populist tendencies on his rise. But once there, he didn't want to change the system. So we might say his was more a restoration project than revolution. He described the Republic of his day as a faded picture, a once vibrant masterpiece that had lost its colours, and he wanted to touch it up again, bringing back good old-fashioned morals and virtues. Now, he might have been a bit old-fashioned, but he definitely wasn't out to destroy the Constitution. His was a rule of law, and he saw himself very much as a defender of the Republic as he advanced later in life. So one of the things that we learn about political outsiders from the example of ancient Rome is that seldom do true outsiders actually shake up the system. Rather, they enter into it only to protect it, maybe improve it. But they also reveal the advantage of claiming outsider status. And much more interesting is the type of outsider who claims to be an outsider when they're really not. So it's more about the image rather than the reality. So in the year of Cicero's consulship, Another politician called Kathryn was trying to gain popularity by advocating a policy of cancelling debts, just wipe them all free, clean slate for all. Another couple of years later, Publius Clodius Pulcher decided that he was going to have a different policy, and that was going to be free grain for all. So you can start seeing the lengths that people go to win popularity. Now, what's interesting about these two examples is that, like Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus before them, they both came from established, well-to-do families. So it's not so much a bottom-up approach that the people are arguing for revolution that it gets implemented. Populism is very often a top-down approach. The people's will is a construct, as politicians seek to harness their own positions of power and popularity, building off the back of it. Now, we could say with Clodius and Kathryn that rather than wanting to refashion, improve the system, what they wanted to do was effectively gain the positions that they thought they were entitled to by birth, because this is the way the Republic had always worked. But back to politicians that operate in that way, Julius Caesar, of course, was the arch reformer. Now, he set in motion what became the empire when his adopted son, Octavian, the man we first call the Emperor Augustus, really ran with his reforms and created an entirely new system. Caesar was killed before he got there, but effectively what Caesar was about was looking after Caesar's men. That included anyone that was his supporters. A lot of his policy was about Caesar himself, his own popularity, his own prestige, his wealth and personal glory. But looking after his army, the soldiers and the urban population meant having land for them, having food available and having jobs open on the market. The senators, a group of senators, assassinated him on the grounds that they thought he was aspiring towards tyranny. But the question is, was he a tyrant, or what was he actually out for? And this is a question that has plagued historians because, of course, he didn't really live long enough for us to find out what he was going to do. But Thomas Aquinas struggled with it, for example. He had to distinguish between two types of autocrat, and so that he could accommodate Caesar as a paternal type of ruler versus a tyrannical dictator. But with this surge of populism and our understanding of this new sort of movement of political outsiders, it causes us to re-examine afresh what Caesar might have been to those who knew him at the time. Following on from what Thomas Aquinas said, so Aquinas had concluded that he was more a paternal type of autocrat than a tyrannical dictator. Yet the recent surge of populism causes us to examine the case of Caesar afresh, because he offers us a case study of a man who used the tools of popular politics to a staggering degree. And this, to me, is what makes the study of classics so relevant and fresh today. Is that often we go in search of examples from the past to make sense of the present, but equally we can use the present experiences to inform our understanding of the past. Whether it's a question of politics, power, gender, sexuality, or of intellectual and cultural movements, we can often find inspiration in the practices and the thought behaviours of people from different times and of radically different civilizations.